Wow, I love being introduced by Al. It's a very humbling experience and always quite a big act to follow. How do I try and recreate goosebumps? It was a great introduction this morning because actually what I want to talk to you about is that knowledge doing gap, and hopefully the case study I'll bring to life will explain how we've done that at Unilever. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, my name's Nicky Clement. I lead our people and analytics organisation for Unilever, focused on all things from organisational design, reporting, through to predictive analytics. But let's be clear on that model that Al just shared. Yes, we've done some amazing work and we do, predictive, prescriptive analytics, but we also spend a long time back at stage one trying to get the data right. So please don't think that we've got this cracked. We've been going at it for a long time now. We've got some great war stories of things that have worked and things that haven't. And I'm going to share with you a case that I'm probably most proud of in my 3 years in this role today. But we've still made a lot of mistakes, and there is so much I can learn from everybody else in the room. So whether you're presenting today or just want to share some anecdotes during the breaks, please do come and talk to me, because it's at events like this that I learn the most to help me go forward in my role and my learning. So, diversity and inclusion. I like this quote because I think we often talk about diversity, and particularly in a room full of very data literate people, we're very focused on the numbers. And I will share with you a lot of numbers this morning. But diversity is only one part. We can make sure we're getting the right recruitment, the right promotion, looking at our attrition rates, we can hit our numbers. That's our diversity. But inclusion is actually what we do with it, how we embrace that diversity. So it's not just being invited to the party, it's being asked to dance. So hopefully some of these topics are very familiar to you. Diversity is an increasingly important agenda across the world stage. We hear a lot about the gender pay gap, very interesting most recently in the UK with the reports a year on about some areas of progress and some startling lack of progress in some companies as well. Lots of focus around disability and the importance of how we include disabled employees within our workplace. Thinking about LGBT and where in the world, same-sex marriage is allowed. How are we thinking beyond LGBT to have more inclusive workplaces? And the whole Me Too campaign and the focus now on sexual harassment and making sure that workplaces are a fair place for all and everyone feels able to perform at their best all of the time. So that's the platform that we're talking about. That's why it's the right time to really think about the opportunity diversity brings. But as with a lot of the things we talk about at Unilever, it's not just doing good for the sake of it being the right thing to do. We're doing good because it makes business sense to do it. What you see here is some research done by the B team. I wish I had my own internal statistics to back this up, but I'm going to lean on the B team research, which comes from a case study called Bringing the Business Case to Life for Diversity. But it really talks about the financial benefit, the business benefit, how it actually supports our consumers in how they relate to our brands, and overall the inclusive approach within the organisation and the dividends that pays, how it helps with our career pathing and our talent plans. It also really has an impact as we're selling our brands around the world, driving up our sales. You'll have heard, Ben & Jerry's talk about in their campaigns supporting same-sex marriage in the US. You'll hear a lot about the different campaigns in terms of domestos, making sure we have access for toilets, particularly in countries like India. Lifebuoy, the hand washing. So a lot of our brands are very, very focused about being purposeful. And they are the brands that grow the most. Again, we're doing good because it makes business sense to do so. We heard from Stasia yesterday in the Red Thread research about the importance of the Edelman research. Actually, what we're seeing is particularly our younger generations are more focused on trust in companies. And we see this a lot at Unilever, people coming to us, wanting to work to do well and do good for the world. It's a huge responsibility, and we have a role to play in creating those workplaces where these people can thrive and they can feel they can succeed in their purpose as well as the purpose for our organisation. Going on specifically, I don't know how well many of you know Unilever, but we have something called the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, where we are very focused on impacting our consumers, our employees, and our footprint in terms of our environmental impact. We're really focused, particularly within this, around livelihoods of our employee base. How do we make sure that our diversity is improving? We're creating a fair place to work, opportunities for women, and making sure it's inclusive. And specifically, why gender? Actually, 70% of our consumers are women. It makes sense for the people leading our business to represent our consumer base. Leadership is proven to be more beneficial when it's diverse. And as I've already said, it's one of our sustainable living goals is to improve gender diversity. It makes sense if we're trying to do that more widely that we get it right in our own backyard. And finally, our talent pools. Thinking about creating a strong, diverse, best person for the job approach to our careers, that's where we want to make sure that's in the best possible shape. So, on to some numbers then. Where did we start? So if we go back to 2010, where this journey started, actually, we focused on gender diversity when it really wasn't a strength. We identified the fact that this was something we wanted to improve. And at the time, Paul Polman made some very bold statements about we will be gender balanced by 2020. We haven't given this presentation much because that's a very bold statement to make. But I'm pleased to say, in 2019, we're very close. But that hasn't happened by accident. And I'm proud to say that, yes, it's been due to the leadership of the organisation, the commitment of many, many leaders and hardworking individuals in the HR and wider business community. But analytics has had a role to play. From getting our data right, to doing great reporting, to bringing insights that are truly actionable, it has made the difference. One of the things we did early on was take a very broad view. What do we want to look at? You can take a wider view of Unilever, look at the overall percentage and say we want to improve it. But actually, to really bring actionable insights, you need to take it down to a level and put that data and those insights in the hands of the people that can make the change. So we want to look at each particular location in every function, help the HR teams to understand what's your attrition rate, what's your number of people who are resigning, who are being made redundant, being promoted, being recruited, going off on maternity leave, are they coming back? People going part-time, is it working? Looking at those data sets to understand what is happening and what's lying beneath that. Going more than that, if you look at the whole pipeline, looking to the future, how do we look at our future leaders? What are the key components of being promoted? Can we understand what are those sort of lead indicators? Is there any indicators that suggest that any of those aren't gender balanced? It's looking at every different avenue to take a very broad approach early on and finding the data you need at a nuanced level to give it to the people who can take action. It, of course, helps to have a right seat at the table and make sure that you're being heard and having very public statements, externally talking about our ambition, externally putting ourselves up to be held accountable. That helps, but having the data to back it up helps too. The other thing we did a lot of was testing hypotheses. I talked a little bit about that yesterday, and it really helps to work with the business leaders to sit down and say, what do you think is happening? If this is your gender diversity and it's not where you want it to be, why do you think that is? Exploring that hypothesis, going behind the data, understanding through survey, through interviews, through any different analysis you can possibly think of, it helps us to really understand what the driving forces are, to bring those relevant insights, either to bust myths or to confirm the hypothesis and add weight to that. We've been very fortunate as well to have some academic partners along the way. I think we're all probably in a resource-constrained environment where we'd love more people, we'd love more data scientists, but we can't always have an increasing team. But we're very, very privileged to have an extended partnership. So I have a team of 9 data scientists and organisational experts. But actually beyond that, I have a footprint of around 60 people in the organisation with a passion for this space, ambassadors that want to work with us and bring the initiatives, the data, the insights to life. And we have amazing partners, both in companies, in academic institutes. We have people who come and work with us on temporary basis. And actually, all of that wonderful thought partnership enables us to really take this a step further. So, where that's led us to is our approach to diversity and inclusion. So it's a real opportunity to think about where we want to focus. How are we going to drive change? How are we going to distill all of those insights all around the world to some common themes that we can drive through the leadership of our organisation? And it's been essential to focus and say, actually, the management level is the one we want to tackle, and we are going to tackle that first and foremost. But beyond that, we are going to look at senior levels in the organisation, and you saw on my previous chart, we're very proud to show our non-executive directors, 45% of the women, and on our Unilever executive, actually 4 of the 12 are women as well. And that's an increasing trend that we're seeing. We're doing a lot of work to do mentoring and coaching because that's what we've seen has made the difference. We find the bright spots. We understand where things are going well. How do we nurture them and encourage them and do them more? We're looking more at parental leave, paternity leave. I'm going to embarrass David now. David's in the audience in my team. He's actually doing a Keeping in Touch Day today because he's on shared parental leave. But actually really embracing and bringing to life the policies that are available to you within countries is so, so important. Having the role models to show that that's acceptable. Unilever very recently announced that we're having an increased level of paternity leave for all. And we're working actively to increase that in every country in the world, even where it's not a legal obligation. That's because we believe it's important for women and men to be successful and to jointly take responsibility for parenting to enable full inclusion in the workplace. There's very bold measures taken, and that's because we've understood the underlying data behind it and actually brought those insights to life. We've also spent quite a lot of time on unstereotyping. The reason for that is because we had a very strong hypothesis around unconscious bias. And for those who aren't aware, unconscious bias is judgment made without being aware that we're doing it. And if you have unconscious bias, it will lead to stereotypes. And even though I'm doing this presentation this morning, just as I was coming in, I was aware I was making my own stereotypes because I was like, oh, it's not going to be David introducing me, it's going to be Al. So I'm not going to get the sort of understated English introduction. I'm going to get the very bold, very enthusiastic, I'm going to inspire everyone American introduction. And then I realized what I'd said, and I was like, oh my goodness. Also true, though. But stereotypes are completely normal. It's how we make sense of the world. We need to see patterns in data. That's how we extract information. That's how we make decisions and how we use our judgment. But being aware of how we do it and questioning ourselves whether they're right or wrong is critically important. So we must be aware what's limiting, what's a self-fulfilling unconscious bias. So we did some research and we asked people about whether they felt this was an issue. And interestingly, we've done this not just in our workplace, not just for our employees, but it's something we do with our consumers as well. We talk a lot about de-averaging, unbiased, actually treating every consumer as an individual, treating every employee as an individual. We don't talk about I'm a mother of 2, maternity returner, part-time worker label. I'm Nicky Clement. I'm a human being, and I have my own experiences to bring to bear. I am a mother of 2. I do work part-time. I'm also very ambitious. I lead a fantastic team, and I love doing presentations. Just because I work part-time doesn't mean I want to limit my opportunities, so don't make that assumption. So it's really, really interesting how much we've had to push to just challenge our own assumptions, but having some data behind us to do that really helps. So having tested this hypothesis, there's been a lot of initiatives to really focus on building our vision to truly unstereotype our workforce. And we've done that in a number of different ways. I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I'm going to go fairly quickly, but do ask me more on these initiatives if you want to know a bit more. So we've talked about game changers. So people who have really taken steps to change people's perceptions, to act as role models, to embrace people within their teams. So when somebody comes and talks to you about needing a different level of line management from you because actually they're not being included in the way they want to be, having different needs that you need to adapt to, having a different style, a different approach, those are the people we want to celebrate and actually bring to life so the organisation can see the value and see the change. I talked about a partnership with Harvard. It's been really interesting working with Iris Bonnet, and I probably don't have time to go into it now, but if you have an opportunity, do read her research. It focuses very much on understanding the core needs to do a job and only focusing on those when you're doing recruitment. There's a lovely case study about an orchestra, and when they were recruiting for this particular orchestra, they were finding there was a lot of gender bias, until they actually didn't let the interviewing panel see, but only hear. Because what you want from an orchestra is fantastic musicians that create wonderful sound. What they look like is irrelevant. So they changed that. They even got to the point where they didn't let the women wear high-heeled shoes because they could hear the click of the heel as they walked on stage to do their performance. And they had tremendous results. I won't do it justice in this short time, but do read the research. It's very, very interesting. But she's helped us really challenge and think about things differently. On our journey, we've spent a long time on our path. And as you can imagine, moving up from 38% is relatively easy. When you get to, 48, 49%, that last little bit is really hard to get. And you want it to be a positive experience. It needs to be inclusive for everybody. Men and women want to feel it's an inclusive environment. And actually, that last part, you need some different ideas. You need to think, what are we not getting? What have we not thought about before? And having those partnerships helps hugely. And she's helped us really explore some different avenues that we're currently doing at the moment. We're also looking at the unconscious bias I talked about, actually great initiatives to tackle that. And improving our maternity and paternity provision, helping people with access to childcare support and other employee assistance programs to make sure that they have the support they need to bring their best self to work. We've also publicly announced our focus on disability, so real focus on how do we have better disability representation. Now we've made good progress in one space, we want to make sure it's actually across the diversity agenda and also with LGBT+. So lots in there. But finally, the messages I'd like to leave you with before we move to questions is I talked about taking a broad approach up front. I think it's very easy when you get a business challenge, a business problem, and you want to focus in on, okay, I think I know how to answer that, and I've got a to-do list as long as my arm. I'm just going to quickly give them this insight, this study, this answer, this number. It might be quick, but are you actually going to get the results you're after? I have a popular saying with my team, doing wonderful analysis is great, but if no one's listening, you're wasting your time. You have to make sure that you spend the time with the business to understand the problem, to really get beneath the problem. Are they actually asking you the right question in the first place? Is it the right hypothesis? Or can you peel back the question, get to the underlying cause, the underlying problem that you can really interrogate? Work with them in partnership, go through the data sets. When they look at it, does it make sense? Does it resonate with them? Or does it challenge them? And actually, how can you take that further to really uncover those nuggets that you can use as those powerful insights to take further? So taking that broad approach, don't narrow too early. Make sure that you actually get all of the different data sets that you need and get good data sets. We do a lot of work and we'll go back and say, oh, that's just not what I expected. And you go back and look at the data set and say, that should have been a bigger data set. Why was the data quality not high enough? Invest the time up front to get that right. It's painful and it's annoying, but actually if you do the research on a very poor foundation, you're not going to get the right outcomes. And use a wide variety of data. If you've got survey data, employee data, you've got inputs from your HR business partner teams that understand the business. Think about wider case studies outside the business. What have other people discovered before? Can you bring that to bear and think about how that relates to your problem? Work with the business partners, get those hypotheses and really partner with them, because if they feel like they're jointly solving the problem with you, they'll be much more invested in the outcome. And finally, tell a story. Tell a story with the data so that people feel ownership and interest and actually a human need to take action. It's easy with this agenda because not many people will argue with it. But I have to say I'm incredibly proud of where we've come from and where we're now going to. And that has been delivered because of leadership, passion, and a great set of data that's delivered insights. So thank you.
Fantastic, Nicky. Questions for Nicky? Yeah, there's going to be several. I'm going to need some help on this in the back. Here you go.
Hey, thank you for the presentation. It's amazing to see a company that's much further along in the process than we are at Uber, and we're very heavily invested in the same space. As you've had this push for greater diversity among the genders, have you seen diverging in the attrition rates between the genders? And then one more question is as you've had the numbers in front of the leaders more and more, are there any concerns they're going to try to force the figures just for the diversity factor, but not the inclusion factor? And how do you temper that? It's not just about the numbers.
Oh, great question. And probably one of the things I should have focused on a little bit more is we're very the easiest way to meet our target would be to go, okay, we're going to have a 90% female marketing team. And, you know, we're fine with 30% in supply chain. But that's not what we did. It's about everyone being equal. So actually, marketing being at 90% is not okay either. We're talking about balance. Now, that is something we really want to focus on, and working with our leaders to talk about the benefits. So that slide I had early on about the business outcomes, the financial performance, the business performance, talking about where we're going, the end game we're trying to achieve. That's not achieved just by meeting a number. That's achieved by the climate you create. So that's why the story is so important. And I'm sorry, I think you had another part to your question. The attrition rates. So we do. And that's something we keep an eye on, actually, month on month. And we actually have a Tableau dashboard with each of the diversity rates for every part of our business, down to a very granular detail. And every month we report on voluntary attrition, involuntary attrition, promotion rate, recruitment rate, maternity returners, all of these different stats, so you can spot if you have a spike in an issue. So you can then interrogate that through exit survey data, which I wish was better than it is, but it's a start. Exit interviews, understanding, you know, where people are going, why are they leaving? So yeah, all of that is something we keep a very close eye on. We haven't seen a specific issue, but I think I can't emphasize the importance of enough of inclusion, because if you create an organisation where women are just promoted to meet a quota, it won't last, because the environment you create is not a meritocracy, and therefore it's not a positive working environment where women are going to thrive and stay.
Hi, Nicky. Adam Gibson, Capita. Really great talk. I think the thing that I'm really interested in is you've got clear commitment to gender balance. We have gender balance in society, why not in the organisation? You've got a commitment to disability, which is at 5%, and obviously working age disability is around 16%, and you're talking about targets to other things. So I was just wondering, what is it that, what enables you to set those targets? What's your determining characteristic of your targets for diversity?
So normally we look at what's out there as best practice. What are we saying in terms of what other organisations are doing? Those who are best in class, how are they achieving it? What's the academic research say? We also take a lot of advice and guidance. And I will say, honestly, some of the things make me nervous initially. So our disability data all around the world is not rigorous and detailed enough yet that I can confidently get to that number. So actually, by publicly saying this is what we're going to achieve, we have to get our act together. We have to be bold and say, actually, we find a way. We make it work because we've got that leadership commitment. It drives that focus. We're still testing, but the good thing is that we are making sure that we're pushing and constantly pushing more and have that dissatisfaction with the status quo.
We have time for a couple more questions. I know there's others who had raised their hand in right here.
Hi, Nicky. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Al mentioned earlier about the difference between knowing and doing. And also you mentioned the importance about giving the right instance to the right people. And I wanted to ask, when it comes to doing, how do you mentor, as you said, how do you train the managers and the business partners to facilitate the conversations and to know how to talk about discrimination, to know how to talk about these sensitive issues?
Oh, great question. And I think, if I'm honest, HR business partners find that easier because they expect to do it. Actually, HR business partners feel it's their responsibility. Certainly, I'm very fortunate in Unilever that's the case. We normally have HR business partners that have strengths in succession planning, career planning, recruitment, diversity. The bit they need help with is how do I use data to bring this to life? How do I use my knowledge of diversity and inclusion, and I want to make the workplace more inclusive, with data? How do I have more impactful discussions because I have the backup and I know that this is something that's important? And actually, that's been a big journey for us. And I talk a lot in my teams about I want to raise the floor and raise the ceiling. Because it's great to do cool predictive things and great academic partnerships and talk to my CHRO, who is wonderful. Lena is just investing in this space no end, but she wants results. And that's fantastic, and I love doing that because that's cool work. But actually, what really excites me is taking every single HR business partner in Unilever with me, from this level to this level. And that's okay. That's all it needs to be. If I have a few bright spots, brilliant, and they can be my advocates and my role models. But giving them the knowledge and the tools to actually make a success of it. And the Tableau dashboard I talked about is super simple. It's bar charts, which I'm sorry to say are blue and pink. But, actually it's obvious and it makes it nice and easy to read. And they can use snipping tool, stick it in a PowerPoint deck and use it. So actually, if they've got to do a training course to understand the dashboard, they're not going to use it. It has to be quick and easy to use, ready to understand. So actually, I think it's less of a problem about diversity and inclusion and their ability to implement, and more about equipping them well and helping them understand the data to make sure they're tackling the right things. Sorry, I answered a totally different question to the one you asked, but...
Well, with that, Nicky, again, outstanding, fantastic. Thank you, congratulations, appreciate it.
Thank you.